The movie kicks off in New York. With John Wick training rigorously, the Bowery King enters the scene and presents a new suit for John, not before asking him if he is ready. He replies with, "Yeah." The scene shifts to the desert, where John is chasing three horsemen. They are running for their lives as he storms a hail of bullets and takes down the first one. As the chase continues, the elder watches from a distance while John takes down the second horseman and finally the last one as well. After which, he stops, gets off his horse, and reloads as he walks toward the elder. The elder asks the reason for his visit, and John replies that he wants his ring and his freedom back. However, he doesn't have the ring and tells John, "The only peace you will have is in death, and no one can escape the high table." Annoyed, John doesn't like that answer and puts 2 bullets into his head. Going back to New York, at the Continental Hotel, a mysterious man walks in, known as the Harbinger. He hands an envelope to Sharon, demanding to speak with the manager. Sharon contacts Winston, informing him about the situation and escorts the man to the upper floor to meet with the manager. The Harbinger then reveals that the hotel has been condemned and provides an hourglass, giving him 1 hour to evacuate. He also says that the 12 members of the High Table have signed the decree, granting Marquis the power to act as judge, jury, and executioner, after which, Winston and Sharon instantly make their way to have a meeting with the Marquis. Upon entering the room, they witness a similar hourglass on the table. We're then introduced to the Marquis as he says an amazing quote, "Second chances are the refuge of men who fail." Winston, justifying his loyalty, reveals he shot John Wick, to which the Marquis laughs, saying that John is still alive and polluting everything he touches. He goes on by saying that the Continental is being expelled from the filthy city of New York, and Sharon stresses the importance of everyone following the rules, even the High Table. Ultimately, the Marquis blames Winston for John's actions, and as the last grains of sand fall, the Continental Hotel explodes. Winston is then declared excommunicado, and Marquis then aims his gun at him but shoots Sharon instead. On the floor, Sharon, taking his last breath, then dies while holding hand with Winston. Next, we're introduced to Cain, a blind man in Paris. He overhears a young girl playing music in a small crowd. Shortly after, he is summoned to a meeting with the Marquis, who wastes no time in getting to the point, saying that Cain almost breached the terms of his deal by getting too close to his daughter that day. Despite his retirement, the Marquis threatens to take Cain's daughter's life if he doesn't comply with his demand that he has to take a life. Cain is then given a card with the word Wick on it, which stops him as he reads. Cain reveals that he was a friend of John's, but he's willing to provide his services to the High Table. We make our way to Japan, at another branch of the Hotel Continental. A tracker then makes his way to the hotel's reception desk. There, we meet the hotel's concierge, Akira, who allows the dog entry as an emotional support animal. She then walks with the manager, Shimazu, who is also her father. She reveals to him that everyone is anxious, as he's friends with John Wick, which could result in an unforeseeable future with the High Table. However, Shimazu calms her down by saying not to worry, as they have done nothing wrong. As he departs and makes his way upstairs, he is met by John, who tells him that killing the elder was a mistake. He also informs him of Sharon's death, and John is not pleased. He warns him that the High Table will not stop, and John says sorry to his dear friend for troubling him like this. Downstairs, the tracker looks at John Wick in his book, revealing he's also tailing John. As he quickly realizes, the concierge from the High Table is in the hotel. They go to Akira, demanding for the manager. Surprised, she then tells them to get comfortable. Next, she rushes upstairs to her father and sees John Wick there, which angers her, but Shimazu says to stay with John as he handles the men downstairs. As he is on his way, he tells his men to get locked and loaded. They all go to arm themselves and are ready for war, if necessary. Next, Shimazu appears downstairs and greets the High Table's concierge. However, the High Table believes that the hotel is providing help to John Wick. The concierge demands full access to the hotel, and Shimazu agrees on the condition they hand their guns over, as no business can be conducted on continental grounds. Simultaneously, Cain makes his way onto the scene and greets Shimazu as an old friend, and they talk about brotherhood. But the concierge silences them by saying, "This hotel has been deconsecrated, so step aside." Shimazu then turns the lights off, and they come back on very dimly as archers surround them. On Shimazu's command, they fire and kill a few men, and soon swords are taken out. They get into fierce combat as the hotel wins and aims their guns at the last man standing. However, to their surprise, a hit squad wearing complete bulletproof armor enters the building. Witnessing this, Shimazu and his men retreat. The concierge then commands them to secure the hotel and find Mr. Wick. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Akira and John are attacked. Akira makes marksman shots, killing some men and showcasing her skills. At the same time, John, who already knows the weak spot of the armor, which is located in the neck, expertly takes out multiple men at once. Simultaneously, Kane also gets involved in the action, and for a blind man, he beats the living hell out of his assailants by using some alarming sensors to find the exact location of his enemies. 𝐤𝐿 and John attempt to escape the building and begin killing anyone in their sights. 𝐤𝐿 showcases her exceptional fighting skills as she kills and massacres all the men mercilessly, without any hesitation that come her way. John then takes out a few henchmen, but 𝐤𝐿 is shot during the fight. Her father comes to the rescue by eliminating the shooters, but not before he picks his daughter up and tells John to go the way he came in, asking John to kill as many as you can. As John makes his way out, he is met by 4 assailants. He then easily eliminates 2 of them as he goes into combat with the remaining. After using 1,000,000 bullets on their armor, he kills them. He's then ambushed by an NBA-sized player, and John decides to rely on nunchucks. He takes on 2 of them, but at the end, he pulls out his pistols, killing them. He kills some more assailants by doing some sick moves as he swings and kills the man. He doesn't get a second of rest as Kane makes his way in. Soon, John and Kane have a fight. They just pull the trigger and begin raining a hail of bullets towards each other, but Kane manages to get the upper hand, cornering John. Suddenly, the tracker begins firing. He shoots at Kane, and this leads to John's escape. Meanwhile, the bounty for John has now been raised to $20 million, making the case more intense. As John goes outside, he's ambushed, but he manages to kill the last man, not before taking his medallion. From nowhere, a dog then springs into action and kills 2 attackers. The tracker reveals himself, which makes John more confused. To his surprise, the tracker then kills an assailant from behind John, and by looking at his phone, he tells him that he wants more money, as the bounty is not enough, and lets him flee. Meanwhile, 𝐤𝐿 and her father are trying to escape the hotel but are found by Kane. He tells them to give John's whereabouts and leave. However, 𝐤𝐿 decides to protect his friend John and takes out his sword. As they begin fighting, Kane easily overpowers 𝐤𝐿 and gains the upper hand in the fight, stabbing 𝐤𝐿 multiple times. Witnessing this, 𝐤𝐿 runs towards her dying father, and Kane shows mercy on her, letting her escape with revenge in her eyes. Later on, John finds himself in the subway station and finds 𝐤𝐿 there as well. She blames John for all this chaos and tells him he must kill Kane or she will. Back in New York, at the Hotel Continental, Winston is visited by the Bowery King and tells him he needs to speak to John. He replies that it didn't turn out well for him last time. The scene shifts to the tracker who was having a meeting with Marquis, where he informs him that he can find John for an amount of $25 million. As they negotiate, all of a sudden, Marquis stabs his hand to show his dedication. The tracker pulls his hand out of the knife, and they shake hands on $23 million. Next, John pays a visit to Winston, and they meet at Sharon's memorial. Winston asks John, "Where will this end?" as he tells John that he will run out of bullets before they run out of heads. Instead, he should challenge Marquis to one-on-one combat, revealing that the members at the high table can do so, and if the challenge is presented by their family, the latter must accept. Winston then tells John to go and amend things with his family, who already have a place on the high table. John makes his way to Berlin and goes inside a church. As he walks towards the altar, the priest pulls out a shotgun and shoots at John, after which he tells him, "Nice suit." The scene then shifts to Marquis' luxurious mansion as he gets on the phone with the tracker, where he informs him that John is in Berlin and demands his fee. However, Marquis says, "The deal was for your service," and reveals that either John dies or he does. Inside the church, John's family starts torturing him as 𝐤𝐿 tells him that he ruined everything and that his father died because of him. She reveals she intends to kill him until he mentions the one-on-one duel. However, 𝐤𝐿 tells John that if he kills the man who murdered their father, she will mend his ticket, and he can again become part of the family, to which John says he needs a way in, and she sends Klaus to help him, who hits him hard. The scene cuts to a nightclub, where Klaus takes John, restrained, to a kingpin named 𝐤𝐿, who laughs as he reads the letter. To John's surprise, Kane also walks in, and 𝐤𝐿 reveals that he has been set up by his family, who gave him up to save themselves. Tension rises as 𝐤𝐿 aims his gun at John. In response, Kane also aims his gun at him. Surprisingly, the tracker also joins the party. All 3 men want to be the one who kills John, and so they play a game of cards to decide. As the game takes place, 𝐤𝐿 is somehow able to draw a 5 of a kind. John immediately slices him, and everyone starts attacking each other, along with the dog. Shots are fired, and several lives are taken in an instant. 𝐤𝐿 runs for his life, and John makes his way inside the club, showing his dedication. He begins to eliminate every adversary coming his way. He finds the kingpin, and they begin hand-to-hand combat. 𝐤𝐿 overpowers John, throwing him around, not before dragging him with his tie. The fight continues as 𝐤𝐿 lands a brutal kick, which makes John fall off the building, leaving him disoriented. Getting back up, he immediately faces hostility from 4 assailants. John mercilessly eliminates them using their weapons one by one. However, he's then attacked again by 𝐤𝐞𝐬, and they exchange a few punches. John puts him on the ground, but not for long, as 𝐤𝐞𝐬 gets up and makes a run for his life. But John throws an axe at him and throws him off the stairs, resulting in 𝐤𝐞𝐬 breaking his neck and killing him instantly. He punches him and takes his tooth out as evidence. He then makes his way back to the church, submitting the tooth to 𝐤𝐞𝐬, after which his family accepts him back. To do so, they initiate a ritual, engraving his hand along with 𝐤𝐞𝐬's with the family's crest, and welcome him back to the family once and for all. The scene goes back to New York. Winston walks into a room, paying a visit to Marquis. He's surprised to see Winston. He hands him the notice for a duel, highlighting to settle things the old-fashioned way, as gentlemen should. The terms for John's victory are his freedom and being free from all obligation to the table, as well as for Winston, his title, along with his hotel, will all be restored and rebuilt at the high table's expense. However, the Marquis tells him that Winston is the second, and hence he either walks away a champion or accompanies him to the grave. After which, the scene shifts to John, who immediately visits a table where he sits opposite Marquis. They flip cards to decide the location, time, and weapon for the upcoming confrontation. The duel will be at sunrise with pistols at 𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐬, but Marquis demands a nomination to substitute himself for Cain. However, the Harbinger reveals that failing to appear at sunrise will result in immediate execution. As John leaves with Winston, Cain says he won't fight. However, Marquis tells him that if he wins, he and his daughter are freed, and no one can touch him. But if he doesn't, she would have to face the consequences. The scene then shifts to John, where he makes his way back to the church and meets with Cain. There, they have a friendly chat over their loved ones. Cain tells John that he is a dear friend, but if it is between him and his daughter, it has to be him. After which, John departs. Later, John heads down to an abandoned station where he meets the Bowery King along with Winston. He hands him a nice suit and tells him he must look his best if he's getting married or buried. Elsewhere, Marquis goes to his concierge and says to him, "I have a feeling Mr. Wick will never make it to the duel by sunrise." His concierge understands and goes in search of him. Meanwhile, the contract for Wick has now changed to find and destroy and has been scaled to a massive $26 million. On the radio, everyone in the city is alerted to kill John Wick as he is a thorn in their paradise. Many different crews get locked and loaded as they prepare to destroy the city to find Mr. Wick. At the station, John asks the Bowery King for a gun. He then gives him a 9mm Pit Viper pistol that has a 21 mag capacity and about a million other technical benefits. John is impressed and asks, "How close can you get me to the church?" They take him on a luxurious boat ride, where Winston reveals what to put on Karen's gravestone and decides to put a friend. Soon, the king says that's as far as they can go. As John departs, he says, "A loving husband. This should be on my gravestone." As John exits, the radio station is immediately alerted to his location. He is then surrounded by many men as they come from all directions. The fighting begins, and as he takes out the first two, he is hit by a car. He then eliminates the driver and is rammed by another car. Once again, he takes care of him and loves the idea of ramming people with a car. He utilizes the car as cover while killing a few more men and takes off as his location is updated on the radio. Soon, an army of mercenaries makes their way toward him. He then puts his car in reverse and eliminates the driver. Next, he starts to do a donut and skillfully takes care of the men in the middle of the road. However, his vehicle is then slammed and flipped over. John gets out and is ready for war. He expertly takes out 1, 2, 3, but the fourth engages him in close combat. He quickly subdues him as well. Soon, the concierge of Marquis runs after John, and they shoot in between cars coming their way. They go into a fistfight for a while, and he throws John onto an oncoming van. They continue fighting until he himself is thrown onto an incoming vehicle. John picks up his gun and starts running as it becomes chaotic. A hail of bullets is fired at will, and people get hit by cars indiscriminately. John tries to get off the road until shots are fired at him. He makes his way back into the traffic. Adding to the difficulty, the tracker arrives on the scene. He gets locked and loaded and is just running around, killing anything that moves, assisting John. John finds a bike and jumps on it and makes a run for his life as they chase him and get him cornered. John then does a sick move, and he makes his way inside a building where he can give himself the advantage. He starts eliminating his attackers one by one until he has pretty much screwed everyone up. Meanwhile, the tracker then gets a call from Marquis, and the tracker demands $35 million for John Wick and ends the phone call, enraging Marquis. He then starts killing his rivals so that he can claim the prize for himself. Marquis then calls him back, and the tracker now wants $40 million, to which Marquis agrees, and everyone is alerted to the prize money increase. John remains in the building and kills off 2 assailants as he uses a custom-made rifle, killing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. In the next 10 seconds, he takes out like 20 goons. On the other hand, the tracker is also shooting at Will until they start fighting each other. They get into a fistfight, and John gets him at gunpoint as the concierge is aiming his gun at the tracker's dog. Instead of saving himself, John decides to save the dog, and the tracker immediately realizes that John is one honorable man. John jumps out of the building and looks at his watch, as it is about to sunrise, but his location is announced once again. He has a good stare down with his attackers until he starts ramming his trigger, just like a video game with levels. He has to take out a few as he ascends the stairs. As he moves, he kills and kills and kills some more until he reaches the top. However, he is then thrown down, falling the first flight of stairs, until he is beaten and kicked down to the bottom of all the stairs. Seeing his watch, John realizes there are 3 minutes to go. As he is losing all hope, suddenly Cain arrives and tells him to start climbing. He helps him up, and they start fighting their way to the top. Cain and John prove to be a deadly combo as they easily take out many assailants, making their way to the top. As the concierge once again faces John, this time he has had enough and gets him onto the ground. He walks towards him with his pistol, and as John is about to die, the tracker is there and looks at his dog. He decides to save John's life by shooting the concierge, after which Cain appears and stabs the man's hand with a pencil, subduing him. As Cain and John walk off, the tracker looks before the man who tries to hurt his puppy. He kills him, and his dog pees on his head for payback. John just makes it on time, just before the sunrise. The tracker, along with his dog, takes a seat to enjoy the show. The 2 men then take off their vests, after which they are handed a pistol each and are ordered to take their positions. Cain tells him, "See you in the next life," and they take 30 paces away from each other. They are handed a bullet, not before Cain tells Marquis to shut up. Meanwhile, Winston and John enjoy the sunrise as John asks for any of Winston's last words, to which he tells him to have fun out there. Next, the Harbinger asks if both men are ready. When they agree, he says, "Fire." Cain is hit in the shoulder, and that's it. After which, they come closer to each other and reload their pistols. He says, "Fire again." Cain gets hit in the stomach area and John cops one in his shoulder. After looking at each other for a while, they are then commanded to step closer as they reload once again. As some sad music starts to play, both knowing that one must die, everyone just stops and stares at each other, awaiting the call. Fire is shouted again, and John is on the ground, bleeding out, as Winston looks at him with concern. Witnessing this, the tracker gets emotional as well. Marquis grabs the last bullet and walks to Cain to take his gun. Cain asks if his daughter is free, and he says yes. He walks towards John while loading the bullet into the gun, aiming it at him. However, Winston interjects, calling him an arrogant fool, and tells him that John didn't shoot. He looks at him, but John pulls the trigger and gets a headshot. Witnessing such, the tracker laughs, and the Harbinger tells John his obligations are now satisfied, and he is a free man. He also tells Cain that he and his daughter are also free. He says to Winston that he will be reinstated and the hotel will be rebuilt at the table's expense. Now, their business is concluded, and they walk off. Cain goes to John and calls him brother. John says that Cain owes him one, insinuating that he intentionally didn't kill him. Winston and John speak, and John asks him, "Will you take me home?" Winston looks at his wound and says, "Of course." As John slowly walks towards the stairs, Winston's eyes become watery. He slowly sits down on them. While sitting alone on the stairs, John starts getting flashbacks of Helen and whispers, "At work," after which, due to his injuries, he slowly collapses on the ground. Back at home, we are at a graveyard with John and Helen's graves side by side. The Bowery King, along with Winston and John's dogs, stand there. Winston is heartbroken and puts his hand on the tombstone, saying, "Goodbye, my son." After which, they walk off, and sadly, the movie comes to an end. We have a post-credits scene, which is just as sad. Cain has a bouquet of flowers and is finally walking towards his daughter with a smile on his face. We move to find Akira walking towards him and pulling out a knife as the movie comes to an end. Thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you in the next one.